Hi everybody and welcome to week 2 of Introduction to Research. So this week there's really not too much to worry about. This is really a continuation of last week. So our first module here that you can see here is all about what research is all about and why we bother, is just continued on into this week. So you've had 2 weeks to go through this module, so it's not too stressy. In terms of things to look out for that are important, let's just go and have a quick look through. This is all introduction, so you probably got up to about here, I imagine, about up to the sort of evidence-based librarianship stuff. So really, it's just a matter of reading through some of the things. You don't have to read all of it, so don't feel like you've got to wade through absolutely everything. It's really just a chance for you to read through the coursework, dip into the odd link out to an article or something that we've given you for extra reading. Those extra readings really are there for you to follow if you want to. If you don't want to, then that's fine too. It's just if something interests you and you feel like you want to get in there and have a bit more of a read and see something in a bit more depth. This little diagram I thought I would talk you through because it sort of sums it all up really. So what we're doing here is these are things to consider when conducting research. So this comes from an article that was written quite a long time ago by Kirsty Williamson in 2002, and we still use it because it does sum up the whole research process quite nicely, even though it's old. The research process doesn't really change. The ways we do research, or the ways we analyse the research that we do, does change. It's just in terms of some of the tools and technologies we've got that help us do that. But in terms of the actual reasoning behind why we do research and how we go about doing it, the data collection in particular, really doesn't change very much. So that's what this little diagram here is all about. This is the thinking that we go through, or the steps that we go through in our research, and these are some of the themes or the considerations that we have at each point. So what it's saying here is, what is the problem? So in terms of what is the problem, we're thinking about what is it that we want to know. What is this issue that we've come up with in our heads and thinking, gee, it'd be really good to have some research on that so we can understand it a bit better. And it could be anything. It could be the way our users use our catalogue or anything at all, really. So that becomes the research question. So the research question, if I use my research as an example, my research question at the moment that I'm working with is, in what way, I haven't actually got this down to an exact statement yet, but where my thinking is at the moment is, in what way do libraries contribute to the education of kids in juvenile detention? So that's a research question. That's the thing I want to be able to answer. And then I look at, okay, well, what precisely do I want to find out? And they become my objectives. So they will be things like, I want to know what libraries look like in juvenile detention. I want to know if they're run by librarians. I want to know if they have funding so they can purchase new materials. I want to know, is there a relationship between the library and the education program? So are they sort of working together like you might expect in a school library? And they're probably the main things that I want to know. So there's like 3 objectives, 3 things I want to find out to help me answer my research question. Then you're thinking about, okay, to answer this research question, to meet these objectives, what sort of information am I going to need? And for me, that becomes the data gathering process. So for me, that is things like, I want to know about what do these libraries look like in Australia. So I want to know across the whole of the country, what do these libraries look like in juvenile prisons. I might get some data about budgets within them. Do they have budgets? How much money have they got? I might get some data about how many libraries in Australia and juvenile justice facilities are actually run by librarians. So all sorts of bits and pieces of data that I could pull together to be able to answer my research question and meet my research objectives. Then the next step we think about is, okay, now we know the question we're trying to answer. We know what sort of data we want to be able to get to be able to answer that. Now let's think about how we're actually going to go about gathering that information. And that can be all sorts of different methods. For me, it's probably going to be phone calls off to people who are running juvenile justice facilities. Hopefully I'll get a chance to visit a couple and talk to the people who are running the libraries and investigate how those libraries are integrated into the prison system for the kids. I might do some desk research where I might look at trying to find a list of all the juvenile facilities in Australia, for example. I might do some reading of people, if anyone's published anything in this sort of area. I might go and try and dig that up. So these are all different ways I'm going to gather my information to help me answer my question. And then the next thing I'm going to think about is, okay, if I'm going to go out and ask all these questions of people and meet with people and talk with them and interview them and all that stuff, is there any ethical consideration here for me to take care of? So do I need to make sure that I'm doing this ethically, and what do I need to do to ensure that that happens? Now, if you're doing prison-based research, there are always ethics involved because, well, a couple of reasons. So, like if I was working with directly with prisoners, like I was when I did my PhD research, that would involve me sitting down with a prisoner and asking them questions about how the library, what role the library plays in their lives. So that becomes almost like it's a bit of like a power relationship. So prisoners are considered to be a vulnerable population, as are children, people with disabilities. There's all sorts of other people that are considered to be vulnerable. Prisoners are one of them. So when you are interviewing or gathering data from one of these vulnerable populations, you have to get ethics clearance just to make sure that you're looking after their interests, that their privacy is going to be maintained, that the information you gather from them is going to be looked after properly and not shared inappropriately. So all sorts of reasons why we might need to get clearance on ethics. So to get clearance on ethics means you have to go to the ethics department in your university. So for me, it's my university because I work for a uni. So I have to talk to the ethics staff and say, this is what I want to do. There's invariably forms to fill in, and you have to prove the value of your research. You have to prove that it's going to be undertaken respectfully. You have to guarantee that the data you gather is going to be stored so that the privacy of the participants is maintained. So there's all sorts of things you need to consider. If you're doing ethics and you're working for, say, a local council, there might be their own ethics arrangements that you have to go through with your council. So there are things to consider when you're looking at ethics, and just to make sure that you're looking after the people who you're going to be getting data from, and you're going to be looking after the data you get from them appropriately. And also your own safety. So if I'm going into prisons, interviewing prisoners, I have to guarantee that I'm not putting myself at risk. So that's something that turns up in the ethics applications as well. And then we go out and we get our data. So I sit down with, say, the librarian at a juvenile justice facility, and we talk about all the things I need to know that will help me answer my question. The next step then is this analysis of the data that I found, and to get some results from that analysis. So this is just thinking about, well, what am I actually hearing here? What stories are being told by the data that I've been able to gather? And they become the results of your research. So I'll come up with a whole bunch of results based on analysis of what I'm hearing. So I get a chance for the data to start telling me some stories. The final thing we look at here in the research process is, how do the results influence current practice? So this is a discussion and implications for practice. So this is thinking, okay, this is the question, I've now answered it. I now know everything about juvenile justice libraries and how they're important and how they're used. So what does that mean now? Why is that important? Who can learn from this? And what are the implications of this new knowledge? And that could be something like that juvenile justice facilities that do it particularly poorly can then learn about what I know now about juvenile justice facilities that are doing it really well. So I might identify an example of best practice, and then I might be able to write that up as a case study and then send that around to all the other juvenile justice facilities and say, hey guys, if you really want to do well with your library service, this is what it would look like. This is the sort of practice that you could do. So that's sort of like proving the worth and the value of the whole research project that you've done. And so really that is the steps within the research process. And that's just something to get your head around and think about. You might want to sort of think about how any research that you would like to do in your workplace, perhaps, how that would fit into these steps and how you would do each of those steps. And that's just the sort of thinking we go through when we're doing research planning. So that's probably the most important thing to pick up from this week's reading on the second half of Module 1. There's a whole bunch of reading in there, which you can do if you want to. Not all of it is important. Just dip into things. It's all useful, but you don't have to do it all. So if you find you are losing the will to live, just read the content that we put up for you. Dip into one or two of the extended reading articles there, and you can always jump over to the discussion list and have a bit of a talk about your thoughts as you're going through the content for this week. So I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, I hope don't get too stressy. In terms of the assessment that you have to do, the first assessment, which is the online quiz, there's not a great deal from this first module that will turn up in the quiz. It's more just getting your head around what research is, why we bother, and what some of those processes are that we go through to allow us to do research so that we can improve our knowledge and understanding about various things. So I hope you enjoy the week, and I'll be back in touch before you know it. Thanks, guys. See ya.